Welcome to today's Talk Business and Politics Daily. I'm Roby Brock. We're glad to have you with us. I'm joined by Danny Games. He is the Director of Business and Economic Development for Entergy Arkansas. Yes. I got that right?
Perfect.
I could roll through a lot of your other previous job titles.
No.
You've been with Entergy Arkansas
Yes.
before. You left and went with Chesapeake, I
Yes.
believe, for a while. Then you went to AEDC, and now you're back at Entergy, where it all began.
Back full circle.
Yeah, welcome back,
Thank you.
as they say. So
Thank you.
what's it been like coming back to the organization? Is it different than when you left it?
It's certainly different. It is in terms of the commitment to customers and the commitment to the future of electricity service and supply. It's still the stalwart anchor that the state has always known. But the energy landscape has certainly changed. So that's been a great thing to take in and try to grasp and understand the ramifications for that.
I think a lot of people, I would like a lot of people to know more about what you do in your role as Director of Business and Economic Development at Teamwork Arkansas, was what it was once known as. I don't know if it's still known as that now. So, but you guys work specifically on economic development projects all over the state, business expansions, business locations, which is a lot of what you were doing at AEDC.
Yes, exactly.
As well. So maybe explain a little bit more in depth what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Sure. So our Business and Economic Development Office is really directed at helping communities and companies with fostering economic growth in the state of Arkansas. What we do reflects quite a bit of what AEDC does in terms of business development, existing business support, and community development. We have other functions within the organization, but that's sort of in our strike zone and where we align very closely with AEDC and with local organizations.
So walk me through what happens, and let's just say an existing business wants to expand. I'll give you we'll just say there's a steel company somewhere in northeast Arkansas that says, hey, we would like to add jobs, we would like to expand our facility. What does that lead you to do?
So, in the vast majority of cases, companies have options. Companies have options as to where they might either initially locate or where they might expand. So they would typically come to either us, to the state, maybe even beginning with the local economic development organization, and lay out what it is they're considering and what has to be satisfied. Of course, there are other considerations on the table that we cannot control, but certainly we put our best foot forward. The process typically looks like that of a request for information or an RFI. Very defined questions around sites or buildings or infrastructure, taxes and incentives, and utilities. So, in our case, if it's a very large energy customer, we're going to see that reflected in the RFI. There are going to be a lot of questions around electricity usage, rates, incentives, and expectations of what we can do for them versus maybe some other lesser operational considerations.
I know every one of them is very different, but there are some factors that are always pretty much the same. I mean, and you hit on a couple of them there: taxes, incentives. The land has to be there, the workforce has to be available. You're not going to put a 3,000 employee facility in a county that doesn't have 3,000 workers within a certain radius there. But we talk all the time about the business climate in Arkansas. What are some things that businesses have to have initially to even consider coming to Arkansas?
So the thing that companies want the most across the board is certainty. Now, some things you can't be certain about. Your customer may not always be there. Your market may not always be there. Trade tariffs may change. Competition changes. But as much certainty that they can put their arms around, the better. So I think having a very good, stable, low-cost business environment bodes very well for our state and communities.
So that's utility cost, obviously, would be
Including
one of the big
utility costs.
factors. Their land cost would be another.
Taxes, workforce availability and aptitude.
Wages?
wage stability, not so much, I think what we're really finding in so many companies that are becoming more and more technologically dependent, it's aptitude and skill sets as much as wages.
So we hear a lot about we need to change the business climate in Arkansas to make it more business friendly. What does that mean to you? What does that mean we need to change policy-wise?
Well, I would certainly argue up front that we do have a very good business climate. I think that is being reflected in the results that we have seen over the past 3.5 years. When you are at or below the national unemployment rate, I think right now we're at 3.6%. We're seeing the revenues in our state's coffers grow despite having lower tax rates. We're seeing, as you recently saw last quarter, we're the seventh fastest growing state in terms of income growth. That's really a testimony to a very good business climate. Now, you always want to stay ahead of the curve. You always want to have a better tax policy, better regulatory policy. And I think one thing that the governor has put forward, and I think for good reason, is this issue of personal income tax. And that's a big challenge. We're on an island when it comes to personal income tax. And the thing that we want most in terms of economic development is not just jobs, but it's incomes. It's increased incomes. And so having a high personal income tax rate can work against us when we want to improve the level of incomes for all Arkansans.
A little bit of a loaded question here, but can we go too far in promising too much? Can we cut those income tax rates? Can we cut corporate income tax rates? Can we provide multiple incentives? Can we do manufacturing tax breaks? Can we do tort reform? Can we do too much that we put ourselves in a position where we can't keep up with providing some critical services, but at the same time, it's not going to really move the needle that much?
That's right, and that goes back to that point about certainty. The fiscal stability of a state is very important, knowing that you're coming into a state that is able to meet its obligations and pay its bills, pave its roads, provide basic public safety services to its citizens. That's important. Companies don't want surprises. They don't want to make a multi-million or even $1 billion decision to locate here and look up 5 years later and all of a sudden we're needing to raise taxes or do something that's going to end up being punitive to them and to their employees. So yeah, there's certainly a balance and being fiscally responsible and incenting in the right way and only when necessary. Well, those are business decisions that AEDC and the state has to make.
I got to ask you this question a lot at AEDC, but I think it will apply at Entergy as well. How big is the pipeline right now? What are you seeing in terms of, I know business confidence is up, and we've seen the corporate tax cuts from late 2017 at least free up money for potential business investment. Are you seeing a bigger pipeline than what you've seen in previous years, or is it about the same, or is it smaller?
Sure. Well, I think again, the results continue to speak for themselves. I think there have been over 400 announced projects in the past 3.5 years. We are continuing to see good activity. I think the number one driving concern among all of these companies, Roby, is the constraints on labor, constraints on workforce. So I think we could realize a plateau in terms of the number of new announcements, but not just for Arkansas, but other states as well. At some point, every state is starting to bump the ceiling on what kind of labor supply that we can provide these companies. Now, it's a good thing that we have incomes rising, but we also have to have qualified candidates for
So what do we
jobs.
do about that? Where would you go?
Well, I think when you're at a 3.6% unemployment rate, you might say that we are very close to or at full employment. So the two main ingredients is attract new residents into the state. And so there are some projects working that would in fact bring in new new residents to our state. But it's also, I think it's important to how fast can we graduate some of our college students, 2- and 4-year students. How fast can we get them through the system? Because it's really a demographic and retirement challenge that we're facing all across the country. As this highly skilled baby boom generation is entering into retirement, it's just numerically impossible to replace them with millennials who are not choosing their parents' profession and line of work.
Yeah.
And that's across the country.
Technology helps a little bit in that, though, in
Absolutely.
that you don't need as many skilled workers to necessarily run a manufacturing plant as
That's
you
right.
once did.
Productivity gains have been realized. Necessity is a mother of invention, and we're starting to realize more and more of that. And of course, millennials are pretty technologically adept.
Yeah, I got a couple of them, so I'm well aware.
Likewise.
Yes, you do. Last question for you, because this is another thing that we see in the data that's out there. We have a state that has a lot of haves and a lot of have-nots, and you see that. I would say it's almost 2 to 1, have-nots to haves. We have population growth in about 25 counties, and we're losing it in 50 counties. What's going to reverse that trend? And from your perspective at Entergy and the projects that you work on, it's maybe even beyond that for you to answer this question. How do we help those communities that are in the have-not category?
Sure. Well, that is a 50, 60-year trend that we're seeing. Your urban areas are becoming larger and more urbanized. Your rural areas are becoming smaller. And we certainly have those disparities within our own borders. What we have encouraged a lot of the communities that we work with on the community development side is being very good at who you are. We don't believe a Wynn or an El Dorado needs to try to act like a Little Rock. You need to be a very good community, take care of the employers you have, make sure that your own business climate is very conducive, not just to businesses, but to employees. I had a consultant friend with Deloitte who said, it's becoming less and less about business attraction and more about people attraction. So where people want to live, work, and play is becoming quite the draw and the calling card for prospective employers.
All right, it's good stuff. All right, he's an economic developer at heart. He's Danny Games. He's the Director of Business and Economic Development for Entergy Arkansas. Always good to see you, my friend.
Thank you, Roby.
All right. That's all for today's program. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Roby Brock. We will see you next time.
Arkansas Electric Cooperative Corporation provides electric energy across 2/3 of Arkansas. This is an exciting time in our energy history, with incredible progress being made in renewable energy and storage technologies. As our energy portfolio continues to diversify, we'll maintain an all-the-above strategy to provide reliable and affordable electricity. Ever since the first light bulbs were placed in our members' homes, the electric cooperatives have been the solutions provider for our members, and we want to continue that well into the future.
Each day, the promise of our nation begins again. Arkansas and America, moving forward. I help make that promise a reality. It's not for everyone, but people everywhere depend on us.
Oh, I love you too, sweetie.
Trucking delivers, or everything stops. And that's what drives me.